Then okay, let's see the concrete sources of this tradition. So where we know this tradition has existed, and how we know and how we can be so sure. One of the most important example is the verse example for this, because it has been so many times wrongly interpreted. It's the François Couperin famous sentence in his harpsichord school. You have it there. So it is so something like this, that there are, in my opinion, in our way of writing music, faults that related to the way of writing our language. That's why we write differently from that we perform, so that strangers, foreigners, play our music, so French music, less good than their owns. That's so beautiful sentence. For example, on the contrary, Italians write their music in the true values they thought of it. For example, we point several 8 notes of sequences by diatonic steps, and yet we mark them equal, or use enslaved as, and we continue this. Yeah, so it's a very critical remark about their own practice. He admits that it's a bad tradition and it's a problematic thing, but they are still continuing this. And the dangerous thing in this text is that many people don't realize that there is a very important word there. For example, so he is giving here only just an example for stupid, for under-informed persons, or for deaf, or whatever, who has not who doesn't know about this praxis. And today I can hear it so many times that inégalité is when you have a scale. If there is no scale, or if it's jumping a third or whatever, or repeating a note, then it's not inégal anymore, because François Couperin said that it is like this. So I really believe it is just an example, the most obvious example, but it doesn't mean that many other situations would be excluded of this situation of inégalité. Yeah, as if we see many of the sources, there are really quite many. We can really have the feeling that it was something the most obvious and most spontaneous thing they did. They did it everywhere. In some very special situations they didn't do, or very sometimes they used it as a very special effect to make a special effect, t, and then the listener was waking up when hearing something equal. Yeah, so this is an important source, an important composer, but we should not understand this. In the harpsichord school, or harpsichord method of Saint Lambert, is a bit more detailed, but there I took here in English translation. So on the next page you will find this part is Lambert. It's interesting, but also very basic. But here the thing you can understand that inégalité has to depend on the tempo. So if you play something very slow, then it makes no sense to play Inégalité, and no sense, or just technically impossible, or really senseless. But he's not writing about too fast tempos, you know, if I understood it well. But at least this is a bit more detailed. So not only saying that it's just scales and nothing else, or it's not too much information, but it's very clear and black and white. And other important information is Otteter's flute method. Flute and hobo and recorder, it's the same, it's a little booklet, and there you can see this example. It's a very typical situation where Inégalité appears. I mean, even the word and the idea, when he's explaining how to use the tongue, and obviously trying to find the tonguing which is suitable for unequal playing, because unequal playing was the most normal, you know. And then he's teaching us how to make this tonguing, this tu-tu-ru, tu-ru, tu-ru, tu-ru. He explains it in different situations, and then gives this little remark that it's very good because it gives us the performance. It makes the performance naturally a bit unequal, which is good. So okay, and then other very important source we mentioned already. It's on the next pages. You see 2 pages like this. It's Otteter's book about the preludes, how to improvise, how to play preludes. And there is a chapter more or less in the middle of the book about the different measure signs. It's about 4 or maybe 5 pages. I printed only 2 of these pages, but you can see how it starts. And it's very interesting because he says he starts with the 4 slow beats, and then so systematically he speaks about all possible and impossible measure signs. He says what sort of music composers usually compose for that measure sign, wherefore it's used, what is the tempo of that measure sign. So measure sign and tempo was, let's say, almost the same. Allegro or vivace or vivement or lentement or whatever didn't give that much information at that time about tempo as the measure sign itself, especially in France. So we should never forget this. And then he also writes that in this sort of measure sign, it's nice to write allemans or fugues or adagios or whatever. And so on and so on. It's extremely informative and gives really the basic information for us, which is more or less 95% the same as you can find in other 18th century sources, French sources, but there are little differences. And that's great that we have little differences, because it means that it was not like this, that first they have created the rules for everybody and then they composed music based on the rules. But first they performed music, they improvised, they composed, they performed, and then they tried to find out how to set the rules after this alive music tradition. So it was a different order. On the next page, I printed out some modern work I really don't like, but maybe it helps you a little bit to see. It's just a collection of the most important French sources from and 17th century till late 18th century, and telling us in which measure sign which value has to be played Inegal. It's a bit dangerous, this, because some of the examples are taken from very clear informations, very clear documents, others just sort of speculation. So don't take it 100%. But it gives you a good tendency, a good first approach, but nothing more. You must read the original sources, really. Yeah. So it's very easy to say. You want to know which values are in 4/4 when it's written with a C. Inegal. Most of sources say that the 8 notes are Inegal. Okay, so it's good to know, but it should not be the last information about this. And the little differences between the sources are maybe to explain with the tempo differences and the differences of taste, of course, and anything else, or just some misunderstandings or unclear formulation. Okay, the most important, most typical questions about inequality which you might ask me or anybody else is about jumping notes. Many people, many musicians believe that jump automatically excludes inequality note. We don't really have direct sources saying this. We have indirect sources where we might think it means maybe, very maybe, that we should not play inegal. I think the rule should be much more that at the moment when it seems to be totally senseless to play unequal in a bigger interval, then you don't do that. So easy, or if it's technically impossible, or if it's ridiculous, and that's really the big question. If the music is very much Italian style, and if it's imitating very much Italian string formulas, like jumping from the one string to the other one, then it is 99% sure that it's not to be played inegal. But it is not a direct, not that sort of real black and white information. It's just common sense. In fact, you cannot show me any written text from 18th century French written text which says that in case of a jump you cannot, or do you know some? No, not really. Yeah, then that you cannot play inegal. The other yes, I think I gave you one example. It's this one. It looks like this. No, that's that one. No. There. Yeah. So it looks. Yours is a bit different of mine. Yeah. So don't. Okay. So it's a cantata by I think it's Monteclair, cantata for flute and voice. It's already interesting that this rhythm we have, the pairs are always slurred and written out dotted rhythms. So we can call it inegal or whatever, but it is dotted and quite unusually, even with legato bow in between. And then you can see yes, it's bar 1, 2, 3, 4, where the flute part has a written out dotted rhythm. Yeah, tin, tin, tin. But the voice has no. So it's for the soprano it's equally written, but the soprano has text. So for the soprano it's no doubt about this. It's anyway to perform Inegal, and for the stupid instrumentalist it's written out. Well, sorry, not for the basso continuo, only for the flute. So. And it's just one of the many similar typical situations where in the one voice it's written out because it's maybe helpful to avoid misunderstandings in the coordination between the musicians. In the other part, usually in the vocal part, it's not written out. So it's quite interesting. And then from now on, I'm just going to give some examples, some typical or untypical problems, which are, well, maybe not that black and white, and we really have to decide between different options. So this one is coming, is Oteter. It's an almond. It's quite unusual that we have sometimes jumps not extremely big, but fifths, fourths and thirds in both parts, in the basso continuo and in the flute. And in the very beginning of the bar, it's written out dotted. And then nothing. Even you have very similar situations later. This sort of notation is very typical in Italian music, like Veracini, violin sonata. First bar, everything written out dotted, then nothing, because it's obvious, so just to save energy, and you just do the same, you continue. But in France, they didn't do like this. In France, they really continued some articulation which had to be applied in all the piece. They accurately read. Why the composer did this? I think because it's a borderline situation, and it's not. So it's just to make really clear that in the first bar you have to play Inegal, and you should not have any doubt about this. But after clarifying this question whether Inegal or Egal, then he had no more need to continue this way of writing. This is my interpretation, but if you have any, so these are typically the situations where different approaches are possible. Yeah. To me, it seems to be quite logical to continue because technically it's possible. It's nothing against playing Inegal here for the bass. It's no problem. For the flute, it's no problem. It's a bit unusual to have such big intervals, quite many. But it's also interesting to have. Yes, there is one moment where the flute has only a second interval, and at the same time the bass has a third interval, and both have to be played Inegal or unequal or dotted or whatever. So to me it's just no problem. It's just a warning at the beginning that you must just do the normal. You know? To me it is that, but who knows. How about the slurs? So many people might believe that longer slur automatically means that excludes inégalité, yeah? So that means that if you have a long slur, then you don't play or sing Inegal. There is no real source telling this. It is a typical 20th century information. Someone got this idea and thinks it's, I don't know. There is no technical reason and no theoretical reason to do this, or I mean not to play or sing Inegal under longer slurs. Anyway, there are not very often long slurs in French instrumental music. So, or sometimes there are sort of slurs which just mean that something belongs together, but it's not exactly the same as real legato line. So I really don't know any concrete sources saying this, that you have to play or sing equal when you have long slur. But I would be very pleased if you could show me. You can? No?
I suspect it could be in music for the older gamba.
Yeah, that's a different sort. Yeah. It's, any gamba player here?
Yes.
No? Yes? Yeah. I know about this, and I don't know what they think, but I heard many good performances where they play just normal Inegal under the long slurs, but I don't know whether they have big discussions about this or not anymore. Do they have to? So that would be a field I must get informed. But when about slurs, then again a misleading information by François Couperin. So he was the bad boy already 2 times tonight, because in the first book, or how it was, Premier Livre of harpsichord pieces, he gives a table of ornamentations of his special signs and how to perform. This is great, but one of them looks like this. So pairs of notes on a scale, slurred, and the second note has a dot. And he explains that it has to play sort of Lombardic. And because of this, many musicians believe that anyway, even 2 notes connected with a bow are not anymore the normal inégalité, even it can be Lombardic. But one thing we really have to clarify: Lombardic rhythm is a very, very exceptional thing, and it's not to be treated as inégalité. It's a special rhythmical effect. It's something unique. They used much more in Italian music or German music or wherever, England, sometimes in France too. But it's not a opposite inégalité. So very often I see this, that musicians having rehearsal, first meeting with a French piece, and then let's discuss about how to do the Inegal. Let's play normal Inegal or opposite Inegal. That doesn't exist. It's not an option. It's a very, very, very special effect, and as far as I know, it appears very few times in Couperin's music. This articulation, or maybe no time, or once, or I don't know, but not very typical. Not very typical. So this is just one very special ornament, and not a way of just playing. It has nothing to do with inégalité. And you cannot find something similar in the language, in the spoken language. So it is a special effect. Okay, and the same with repeated notes. I didn't really find, it's the same story as with the slurs or big intervals, any really direct information, say 18th century information saying that when it's repeated notes, then you cannot play Inegal, or you should not play Inegal. And very often we have mixed things. So let's say in a cantata for flute, voice, basso continuo, you have different figurations, different rhythms, different scales, up and down and jumps, and very often one of the instruments has repetitions and the other has a scale. And then what to do? Then the one who plays the scale should play Inegal, and the other has to switch to equal. Obviously not. So they were probably, without thinking at all about this, they were just continuing the normal way. And maybe at a certain moment when all instruments started to jump and make big intervals, or everybody just repeating the notes, or some really new movement was coming, then eventually it can be an indication for changing the way of inegality or living inegality. Yeah? But if just some voices, some bars, it's the same as a scale. And that's, again, so this information from François Couperin that, for example, diatonic scales, you have to play Inegal. For example, that and many, many others situations, but he was lazy to describe all the possible situations. Here again, this bigger example, it's a cantata. I think it's again Monteclair or Campra or something like this, I don't remember. Can somebody recognize this? No. It's very nice because it's consequently different in the flute part and in the voice part. So the flute is consequently dotted written, and the same figurations are for the voice without dots in all the movement. And it's really hard to believe that they were doing it differently. It would have been something extremely rare solution. So I think it's just that the singer had the text and the instrumentalist had the written out Inégalité. And then the only open question could have been is just the way of Inégalité, how strong, how mild, how sharp, whatever. Okay. And then some nice examples. Again, it's this very, very little one. We played with Olga last Sunday. Yeah. And it's by Oteter. And it's very, very badly so it's difficult to read. So it's croche, inégal, écoulé. Yeah? And you might ask why it is written that the 8 notes have to be inégal. So croche is 8 notes and inégal. Because the most normal way of playing would be inégal. In 3/4, the 8 notes to be played Inégal. Maybe, very maybe, I don't know. Maybe two possible reasons I can imagine. The first reason is that it's very much in chorale style. It's very much in Italian style. Not very much, but quite much in Italian style. This saraband. And eventually, for those who knows how is Italian style, not to think it is to be played on the Italian way. That would be, because at that time it was exactly that those years when they were more and more opening to Italy and picking up more and more Italian influence, and Oteter himself was visiting also Italy, and he was very proud of that. So that's one of the possible interpretations. The other is that at the beginning in the bass line there are pairs slurred, and maybe it's just an information for those who might think the meaning of this special articulation is to play equal, just a warning not to do that. But it's a bit strange to me. Why is it written here? Rosh Inegal. Kule is okay. That's clear. So just slurred, connected, whatever. We don't know.
It's mistake. Just writing mistake.
Yeah. That's all.
The most simple solution.
That's a good solution too. Yeah. So it's all only speculation, but it's a nice idea.
Like
Yeah.
Fantasies by Telemann. It's for violin in the title.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Then François Couperin is the next example. Here it looks like this. Yeah. Here it's actually nothing very strange. It's a very normal saraband, but why is it written mesuré? So what is non-mesuré? That you can better explain.
Mesuré without Innegalь.
Without Innegalь, maybe,
Yes, just-
maybe, but maybe not. So
Why not?
maybe not. Because mesuré literally understood or translated means only that in measure
Yes.
how it is. So that would be the most